Today, we'll explore China's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure project that has left many countries burdened with debt. We'll uncover the core reasons behind this initiative, its ambitious goals, and the harsh realities that have emerged over the past decade. Zambia, Uganda, Kenya, Mongolia, Laos, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Ecuador, Honduras. These countries share two commonalities. First, they have all participated in China's massive BRI project. Second, they have been burdened with significant debt to China due to their participation in this initiative, leading to financial distress. However, these nations are not the only ones facing debt due to the BRI. Currently, 152 countries and 32 international organizations are involved in this initiative. According to a report by the South China Morning Post on March 28, 2024, even China, which spearheads the BRI, is experiencing financial difficulties. So, what exactly is the BRI, which has plunged many participating countries into debt? The BRI combines the concept of the Silk Road Economic Belt, and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road, aiming to establish a transportation network that connects Eurasia and Africa via land and sea. The BRI was first proposed in September and October 2013, when Xi Jinping visited Central and Southeast Asia, presenting a strategic plan to connect the regions surrounding the ancient Silk Road and maritime trade routes through transportation infrastructure. Approximately a year later, following the APEC summit in 2014, the BRI project gained momentum and global attention. China envisaged that if the BRI were successful, a massive market connecting Europe and Asia would emerge, fostering an era of global prosperity through the BRI. Consequently, China mobilized national resources, positioning the BRI as a new path for global development under Chinese leadership. As of 2023, 10 years after the project's inception, the National Development and Reform Commission reported that 152 countries, representing 83% of nations with diplomatic ties to China, along with 32 international organizations, have joined the BRI. Total investments between China and these participants have reached $38 billion, with China's cumulative BRI-related investments amounting to $996.2 billion as of 2022. Additionally, China claims that the BRI has created 420,000 new jobs in neighboring countries and anticipates that by 2030, 76 million people in BRI-associated countries will escape poverty, with a 0.7% to 2.9% increase in global income. However, as mentioned earlier, reality significantly diverges from these optimistic projections. Purpose and challenges of the BRI. So, what is the purpose of the BRI? Among the many external reasons for China initiating the BRI project, the most significant is the United States. China is highly dependent on the US and European markets. Amid such circumstances, the US has started to contain China and engage in protectionism. Despite the ongoing US-China trade war and competition for dominance, China is aware that it cannot surpass the US. While it's true that maintaining the US market without Chinese products is challenging, it is equally difficult for China to maintain its current position without the US. China's role as the world's factory is replaceable by other nations, while the US's position as a major consumer is irreplaceable. If the US protects its industries through protectionism and diversifies its supply chain to use more foreign products, and if these countries produce better and cheaper goods than China, the US will naturally avoid Chinese products. Europe is also likely to follow suit and use products from these diversified sources. The US's containment of China has become a reality. The U.S. Department of Commerce announced that amid rising U.S.-China tensions, U.S. companies have shifted focus to third countries to diversify supply chains, leading to a 25% reduction in imports from China in 2023. China, which had held the top spot for U.S. exports for about 15 years, fell to third place due to diversification and tariff burdens from the U.S.'s search for a third global factory. Additionally, China aims to economically control developing countries by burdening them with debt. This aspect, which will be discussed in more detail later, is arguably the only part of the BRI that has succeeded. Political and military objectives are also at play. The two previously mentioned reasons, combined with economic control, lead to a confrontation with the US. Participating in the BRI inherently means opposing the US. China, leveraging economic control, plans to establish military bases in surrounding regions under the pretext of security. In the event of a war, China believes it can block transportation routes and gain a geographical advantage. China has already established naval bases in Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Another reason, as widely known, is the prolonged stagnation of China's economy. Since recording a 10.4% growth rate in 2010, China's growth rate has been on a downward trend. Experts argue that this decline is not merely cyclical but structural, making a return to high-speed growth impossible. However, China had a different perspective. China defined the slowdown as a new normal, suggesting that in the new era, sustained development is possible through structural transformation and new growth drivers. This new economic growth strategy is the BRI. While the BRI appears revolutionary when considering its scope and objectives, the reality presents significant challenges, the most pressing of which is debt. Over the past year, many countries participating in the BRI have declared project suspensions due to debt burdens. Debt issues. The core of the Belt and Road Initiative is infrastructure development. Developed countries have not participated in the initiative. Only developing countries have been swayed by the promise of infrastructure improvements. In other words, countries with low dependency on the United States and dreams of economic leaps are the ones participating in the Belt and Road Initiative. Once the infrastructure development is complete, they must repay the borrowed money. Here, China applied an interest rate of 5% per year, about twice as much as the International Monetary Fund. When China lends money to developing countries through private loans or credits, Chinese companies, equipped with personnel and technology, enter the local market and carry out the construction. From the perspective of developing countries, borrowing money and having Chinese companies build the infrastructure brings no economic creation effect beyond the infrastructure development itself. As a result of the Belt and Road Initiative, Kyrgyzstan's national debt rose to 78% of its GDP. Countries such as Djibouti, Sri Lanka, and Laos, along with emerging countries like Pakistan, have also accumulated substantial debt. Sri Lanka handed over 80% of the shares of the Hambantota port, constructed under the Belt and Road Initiative, to the Chinese state-owned enterprise China Merchants Group. Unable to repay the borrowed money from China, Sri Lanka had no choice but to hand over the port's operational rights for a 99-year period. Currently, it has declared default and is negotiating a debt repayment plan with China. Furthermore, there are countries that have gone bankrupt. Zambia failed to repay $6.6 billion borrowed from Chinese state-owned banks and reached its end in 2020. As a result, countries participating in the Belt and Road Initiative have found themselves burdened with debt, leading to their national interests being subjugated to China. Countries heavily in debt have been economically dominated by China. Additionally, infrastructure construction has been poorly executed, with issues such as leaking buildings and collapsing ceilings. A representative example is Islamabad Airport in Pakistan. The hydroelectric power plant constructed in Ecuador started to develop cracks, eventually leading to a declaration to halt operations due to the risk of collapse. China's financial difficulties. Looking at it this way, it appears that China has benefited from lending money, collecting interest, and successfully attracting domestic business. However, China's situation is not stable either. As mentioned earlier, China is also suffering from significant financial difficulties. When participating countries in the Belt and Road Initiative face bankruptcy and cannot repay their debts, China ultimately had to step in to cancel the debts. According to data compiled by the American consulting firm Rhodium Group, between 2020 and March 2023, debts amounting to $78.5 billion, which were provided by China for global infrastructure investment, were either cancelled or restructured. The main reason for the weakening of the Belt and Road Initiative is the United States. While the initiative was proposed to counter the US, China's overt political, economic, and military objectives led the US and Western countries to announce plans to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative, causing it to weaken rapidly. In 2021, the G7 leaders, led by the United States, announced through the Build Back Better World initiative that they would support the expansion of infrastructure in developing countries to the tune of $40 trillion by 2035. In this context, Italy, the only G7 country participating in the Belt and Road Initiative, officially informed China of its withdrawal at the end of 2023. On March 11, 2024, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Richard Verma stated that the U.S. would invest $2 billion in international infrastructure over the next 5 years to effectively counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. This is not a significant loss for the U.S. and Western countries either. They can also increase their economic influence, gain geographical and military advantages, and expand their own businesses. Meanwhile, China is facing very difficult circumstances. At the early stages of the initiative, China's foreign reserves were approaching $4 trillion. But as the Chinese economy grew more centered on domestic demand than exports, foreign reserves rapidly decreased, reaching the limits of the Belt and Road Initiative in many aspects. However, experts predict that China will not halt the Belt and Road Initiative. For China, the strategic and military significance outweighs global economic growth, and it is too late to stop the project now. However, as the initial plan becomes nearly impossible to proceed due to economic difficulties, China is reducing its investment scale and focusing on selective projects. The South China Morning Post reported that China's Belt and Road Initiative is shifting to small and beautiful projects. Strategically and militarily significant regions for China are mainly in Southeast Asia. So China's overseas investments and infrastructure projects are concentrated there, while investments in Africa and Europe have already declined. The aggressive promotion of the Belt and Road Initiative by China has led developing countries to amass enormous debts, raising concerns that it could lead to a financial crisis similar to the Asian financial crisis of 1997. It can be said that aside from achieving economic dominance, all other objectives of China's Belt and Road Initiative have failed. If it expands into an economic crisis, future history books of the 21st century might be filled with stories about China for the next 100 years, from the novel Coronavirus to economic issues. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful content. Take care and see you in the next video. Goodbye.